has shared his time with Mr. Morris. So, Mr. Morris, you have 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur Boulris.
Thank you, Mr. Boulris.
Grad myself, I understand we got some business profs in this room. What I learned at Laurier in my business training is we got to listen to experts and think long term. So I'd like to introduce a quote from an expert in this area on climate science, Professor Jim Scaia, co-chair of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Working Group 3. This is back in April of 2022. Quote, Dr. Scaia says, "It's now or never if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees C without immediate and deep emissions reductions across all sectors, it will be impossible." End quote. Now, I think part of why climate scientists like Jim Scaia have spoken about this urgency is my understanding of the climate science is we have feedback loops. So last year in Canada, our emissions were 702 megatons. The emissions from the wildfires that become more extreme and more frequent because of the climate crisis, those emissions don't show up in our climate balance sheet, but they were 647 megatons. And that's before the Jasper wildfires and all the devastation that was there. Part of how we try to make sense of that is there's the social cost of carbon. The social cost of carbon attempts to reflect the reality of the damages from carbon in the atmosphere at this stage of the climate crisis. It's used by countries around the world, including Canada and the United States. ECCC estimates the social cost of carbon to be $294 per ton. To Dr. Toom, my question for you, in your assessment of the TMX being worth every penny, have you included the social cost of carbon in that assessment? Yes or no?
Yes, and I'm happy to expand.
Okay. So the social cost of carbon is $294 a ton. The TMX pipeline is 84 megatons. That's another $24.7 billion to the cost of the 35 from before. Is your math different?
Yes.
Do you want to share it?
Yeah, certainly. So much depends on who takes up the slack of the barrels of oil that we don't supply. So if the production shifts, for example, to certain fields in Saudi Arabia, then you can get roughly equivalent to about $1,000 per ton in economic costs incurred in Canada for the net avoided emissions. So in that sense, blocking pipelines is a very high cost way and higher than the SCC approach to lowering emissions.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Patzer for 5 minutes.